Good morning, everybody. Dr. Zach Long, lead faculty for the Fitness Athlete Division and PT on Ice with you this morning for the PT on Ice Daily Show. I'm excited to talk today about loading and rehab. Obviously, a goal we set out quite commonly in the physical therapy world and rehabilitation medicine as a whole is to get people stronger. And quite commonly, we're not getting the job done there. And I think it's something that we've become more aware of in recent years, but I think a lot of people are still missing the mark there. So that's where we're going to go today. Morning, Kelsey. Before we get going into that, we do have a couple Fitness Athlete Live courses coming up. Seattle, Washington, June 1 and 2, which is sold out. But the following weekend, I'll be in Atlanta for Clinical Management of Fitness Athlete. That's June 8th and 9th. And then in July, on July 13th and 14th, Mitch Babcock will be in Cabot, Arkansas, teaching down there. So like I mentioned, quite commonly, we're setting goals in the rehab world of helping individuals get stronger so that they can do the tasks, get back to the activities that they love to do. But quite commonly, we're falling short there. And I believe that anytime we prescribe an exercise to an individual, that we need to make sure that that exercise is of sufficient stimulus that we are creating an adaptive training response. So if we're trying to get somebody stronger and all we're doing is lifting pink dumbbells, we're not going to actually provide a sufficient enough stimulus to get to where we create that adaptive training response. So let's break down a little bit a very simplified mindset when it comes to building strength in the clinic. I get messages all the time, and every time we teach a fitness athlete live course, we have a number of people that come up to us and say, I understand that ICE is preaching deadlifts for back pain. I understand that y'all are preaching heavier loading. I don't have that equipment. I don't have a strength and conditioning background. I don't even know where to start. And I think for some people, there's such a large gap between where their knowledge set is and where they think it has to be able to provide appropriate loading, that I think they just say, you know what, I'm going to continue doing what I have been doing for a long time. I'm going to continue sticking to just glute bridges as a glute strength exercise. If you're listening on the podcast, there were air quotes there because glute bridges are not commonly an actual strength exercise, in my opinion, because they're not sufficient enough to create an adaptive training response. But I want to provide a really simplified way about making sure you are loading people enough in the clinic to create these adaptive training responses. So it's going to be very simple if you come from a high-level strength and conditioning background. But again, I don't think it has to be super complicated. And I think quite commonly we can just take the exercises we're currently doing and apply some of the principles I'm going to talk about today and get much better outcomes when it comes to the physical quality of creating strength. So we're going to talk first about four of the scientific principles of strength. There are a number of different scientific principles of strength. I'm going to focus on only four this morning, but I would highly recommend checking out the book Scientific Principles of Strength. If you know your strength and conditioning knowledge needs to be increased, that is an excellent book. It's written for powerlifters and powerlifting coaches, but I think it should be a must-read for physical therapists. Scientific Principle of Strength number one we're going to talk about is specificity. That means that the tasks that we give individuals, the exercises that we give them, must have carryover towards the outcomes we're wanting to get. So if we're trying to get an overhead athlete's rotator cuff stronger, we're going to be more specific by doing external rotations with a TheraBand at 90 degrees than we are at 0 degrees of shoulder abduction. We're also going to be way more specific if we're doing external rotations with TheraBand or weights than we are if we're doing leg extensions specific to strengthening that individual's rotator cuff. Specificity is a very important key point when it comes to loading. Overload. Overload is one that we all learned in PT school in the 5 minutes of strength and conditioning that we got in physical therapy school, but it's one that I think we commonly forget. We have to disrupt homeostasis enough that we're going to force the body to adapt, which basically just means that we need to put more load, more challenge on the system than it has seen recently. That is key. If we are not continually overloading the system, we are not getting people better. So for me, a simple way of pointing this out to a lot of individuals or a lot of other physical therapists is, what does your exercise prescription look like? If you send an individual home with a sheet of paper that says you're going to go do 3 sets of 10 of this, well, maybe 3 sets of 10 was appropriate with that 5-pound weight day one. But as that individual continues to do that exercise, it very quickly should be that 3 sets of 10 is no longer an overloading amount of volume. And so if we're constantly keeping that exercise prescription at the same dosage, then they're not going to get better. So for me, a lot of times, instead of giving a set number of reps to do, I'll give them a rep range and say, once you can, complete this full rep range, like I say 3 sets of 10 to 15. Once they get to the point that they can do 3 sets of 15 with that weight, if I continue to have them do 3 sets of 15, they're no longer overloading. And so at that point, that individual needs to choose to increase the weight so that they're staying at an overloading stimulus. Fatigue management. Fatigue management is an important one that's not discussed quite enough. But fatigue management is basically when we exercise, we decrease a lot of the reserves of the body. So the nervous system gets fatigued. If we go to heavy deadlifts, you'll feel a lot of fatigue. Versus if you do TheraBand external rotations, you're not going to feel a lot of nervous system fatigue. We're going to break down muscle glycogen inside the muscle, so our fuel stores are down. We're going to break down the muscle tissue themselves if we put enough load on the body. So thinking through that, for example, is we have to understand that that's going to change the frequency and intensity of our dosing of exercise at different points in rehab. If somebody's at a point in rehab where we're not able to load them significantly, then our frequency may have to go up considerably, which is fine because fatigue management isn't as big of a player when we're talking about exercises like glute bridges and planks compared to something that is way more fatiguing on the system, such as deadlifts or heavy squats. The last one is another really important one. Phase potentiation. That basically means training one physical quality that will give you more potential to build other physical qualities in the future. Where that's important in rehab is to me the same as when it's important in like powerlifting, for example. A lot of powerlifters will do a period of training focused on hypertrophy where they're trying to build the muscle up bigger. And then they'll transition that to strength blocks where they're lifting significantly heavier weights and they're trying to take these muscles that are now a little bit bigger and then make them actually stronger. A bigger muscle is not necessarily stronger. You have to kind of train those two qualities together. I will wrap that up for you really nicely here in a few minutes, but I think the phase potentiation one is a big one for us as physical therapists. Let's dive into how do we get to appropriate levels of loading for our goals, and then we'll kind of circle back to that phase potentiation in a little bit. So most of the strength and conditioning world, if you look at programs for helping individuals get stronger or improve any physical measure, most strength programs are written as you will do this many sets and reps as a percentage of your 1 rep max. So it might say if you're going to do 5 sets of 5 at 80% of your 1 rep max. And that works really well when we know somebody's 1 rep max or they're not in pain. The problem is in physical therapy, we don't know somebody's 1 rep max usually. Or if you're as lucky as I am to work with a lot of fitness athletes, they do know what their 1 rep max deadlift is. The problem is they're in pain now. And so pain is going to alter their strength output. So we don't actually know what their current 1 rep max is. So that makes loading based off somebody's 1 rep max really difficult in physical therapy / pretty much impossible. Now you can then go and say, what are our options for determining somebody's 1 rep max? And we could talk about, using these conversion charts where you have somebody lift a certain weight, see how many reps they can do, and then you can basically guesstimate what their 1 rep max is. But again, if somebody's in pain, I think even that becomes difficult to do. I don't think it becomes super valid. I think we're fortunate now that there's a lot of research that basically looks at rating of perceived exertion, where you ask an individual on a scale of 0 to 10, how difficult was that rep? And that can give you a number between 0 and 10. And research has shown consistently that RPE is highly correlated with percent of 1 rep max. So we can have somebody lift a weight, and when they say that's a 7 out of 10, you can actually fairly confidently say that that's somewhere around 70% of their 1 rep max. That makes it really easy for us to program exercise. For me, my exercise prescription kind of looks like this. I usually just say, whether we're working at really high reps or really low reps, I just try to get that individual in physical therapy to work up to a RPE of 7 to 8 out of 10. So that I know that they're putting in a significant amount of work. They're not hitting failure, but they're getting to where they're doing a fatiguing effort. They're putting in a hard level of effort. If we simply do that, and you change nothing else about your exercise prescription, you just say, I want you to go, Doris, until you hit a 7 or 8 out of 10 RPE, you have become much better at exercise prescription. I really think for the vast majority of physical therapists, just starting with saying, I'm going to go to 7 to 8 out of 10 RPE is going to make them significantly better in their exercise prescription. Now let's bring that together with some other concepts. So if we're looking to make a muscle bigger, if we're looking to hypertrophy a muscle, the old school thought used to be we need to lift, 3 sets of between 8 to 12 reps at approximately 75% of an individual's 1 rep max. Those numbers are approximate, but we used to believe that there was these specific rep ranges and loading that was better for creating muscle hypertrophy. Well, we now know a lot of new research has come out basically showing that heavy weights and light weights both can create hypertrophy. And we're talking really light weights. We're talking lifting 20 to 30% of the individual's 1 rep max can still create significant hypertrophy. That's awesome news for us as a physical therapist. So to create hypertrophy though, we have to work to a hard level of effort, a fatiguing effort. So if an individual can only tolerate a really light level of loading, let's say that they can only tolerate 20% of their 1 rep max, what does that mean we want to do? That means we're going to take that really light exercise and we're going to have them do a boatload of reps. We're going to have Jimmy sit there with his yellow TheraBand, and instead of doing 3 sets of 10 because it's, he's got an irritable shoulder, he's going to do 3 sets of whatever it takes for him to get to a 7 or 8 out of 10 RPE. So basically what are we doing there? When Jimmy's really irritable and can't tolerate heavy loads, Jimmy's doing a hypertrophy block like we would see in a powerlifting program. He's working up to a high level of effort. It might be that he's doing, a set of 50, a set of 40, a set of 30, whatever those reps are. I just say, Jimmy, go to your 7 or 8 out of 10. He's doing a hypertrophy block. As that individual becomes more tolerant of heavier loading, I'll naturally be increasing the loading of the exercises or increasing the challenge of exercises. My rep range is going to come down. But because my rep range is coming down and I'm still working up to this 7 or 8 out of 10 RPE, I'm now getting more into strength. Strength is more specific than hypertrophy. Hypertrophy can be trained at a wide range of reps. Strength, the lower our reps are, the more specific we are to increasing somebody's strength. So naturally, by just keeping Jimmy at 7 to 8 out of 10 RPE and basically loading him up as heavy as his tissues can currently tolerate, I am naturally creating a system of phase potentiation here, where we start out working on hypertrophy and we just kind of naturally work more in towards strength blocks of training. So really for me, my exercise prescription is as simple as what is the heaviest load that this individual's tissues can tolerate? And let's work them up to a 7 or 8 out of 10 RPE. And let's do several sets of that. 2, 3, 5, 6 sets. We can get really specific with how many sets and reps and things like that. I don't think we need to. I think we're better off if we have those deeper understandings, but I think for the simple fact of making physical therapists better prescribers of exercise, simply understanding if we always take it to 7 or 8 out of 10 RPE, we're going to be significantly better. Now, obviously, there are times where individuals are going to be highly irritable and maybe they don't tolerate a lot of loading. So like we said earlier, maybe we're doing really light loads for high reps. Maybe we're looking at the isometric research that has repeatedly shown that isometrics are a great way to get people that are having a lot of pain to get to loading the system without causing as much muscle protein breakdown, for example, while getting analgesic effects, for example. But there are a lot of different ways to load the human body. Hopefully this is a quick introduction to how to update your exercise prescription a little bit more. But let me give you a couple examples to kind of wrap this up for you so that hopefully it hits a little bit more. Let's say somebody comes into the clinic dealing with some irritable low back pain, highly irritable low back pain. So if you've been listening to podcasts for a while, you'll know that at the Institute of Clinical Excellence, we're big on the deadlift. We're big on deadlifts being a great way to build strength of the back and the entire posterior chain for people with low back pain, that they're great psychologically to help people with low back pain feel just in general stronger, and not just physically stronger, but mentally stronger as well. But if somebody comes in and they're highly irritable, maybe now starting with deadlifts isn't the answer. Maybe we need to go with some more simplified exercises. And so maybe we are doing something like glute bridges, where we're doing a more regressed version of training the posterior chain. It still works the low back a little bit, still works the glutes a little bit, still works the hamstrings. What are we not doing at ICE though? We are not prescribing 3 sets of 10 glute bridges for Doris. What we're doing is saying, Doris, we're going to do a set of glute bridges. And Doris is going to say, how many reps should I do, Zach? And I'm going to say, Doris, I don't know. You're going to go till your little buns are on fire. You're going to go until on a scale of 0 to 10, Doris, you're a 7 or 8 out of 10 tired. And so Doris goes and cranks out 30 or 40 reps. And then next week, we choose a slightly harder version of those glute bridges. And the following week, maybe then we get Doris deadlifting a lightweight as part of a rehab EMOM. If we're looking at something like a rotator cuff tendinopathy, maybe they don't tolerate doing heavy presses. Maybe they don't tolerate heavy rows right now. So what are we doing? We're doing our side-lying external rotations with a 2.5 pound weight, 3 pound dumbbell, pink dumbbell. Well, we're not giving them 3 sets of 10. We're saying, Jimmy, I want you to just do these external rotations until the backside of your shoulder's on fire. Whether that's 15 reps or 30 reps, you're going until you're feeling a high level of effort, a fatiguing effort. Or something like ACL is a great example of this. Where early on, post ACL, maybe somebody's not tolerating heavy loading. So instead of saying you're going to do 3 sets of 10 of straight leg raises, we're going to say, I want you to do as many leg raises as you can without a quad lag. And you're going to go until your quad is on fire, until you feel like that thing is burning pretty good and you need to rest. So that we're at least, even when we're doing a really regressed exercise such as a straight leg raise with our high school running back that just tore his ACL and had it reconstructed, we're at least working into a high level of effort, which will create a hypertrophy response. In this case, it would probably be more like a fighting atrophy response. Over the course of that individual's ACL rehabilitation, we'll be increasing the demands on him. So we'll go from those straight leg raises to mini squats for a ton of reps, to lunges for high reps, to lunges with weight where our reps start coming down, to weighted back squats and deadlifts, etc., where our weight comes down even more. And as the course of that ACL rehab goes on, as Jimmy gets to where he's doing weighted lunges, weighted deadlifts, weighted squats, the fatigue management part becomes more important. Jimmy can do straight leg raises every day of the week and be fine and be recovered because it's a really low level effort that's not that fatiguing on the nervous system or fatiguing on fuel stores. But when Jimmy starts doing heavy deadlifts as part of his ACL, he's not going to be doing heavy deadlifts 7 days a week. So that's when we have to learn to adapt our training frequency as well. So I hope some of these points just gives you some ideas on being a little bit more progressive in your loading of patients in the clinic. Obviously, it can be a much more complex discussion than that. But again, for the purpose of today, I really think that the number one step that all physical therapists need to take is just saying, what's the heaviest load that this individual can tolerate without creating further tissue damage? And then let's work up to a high level of effort, a fatiguing effort, 7 or 8 out of 10 RPE, if they can tolerate it, and let them go to town. I hope this helps. Again, I understand that there are going to be holes in this, and we could have a million different little tiny discussions around, well, in this case, in this case, in this case. Please use this as a general philosophy, not a specific case-by-case basis. As always, hit comments up, and we'd be happy to answer them. Have a great day.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.